Hi, everyone. I hope you're doing really well. And as you can see, I'm live here with Michelle. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Very, very, very well. And so Michelle and I will answer questions from the community. And before that, I want to talk about a topic that came up in our Slack channel. And everybody's wondering, what Slack channel are you talking about? Well, Michelle, you have joined the Sleep Coach School to become a sleep coach.
Yes, I'm just over a month in. So far, it's been such a great experience. I'm absolutely loving it.
I'm so glad you did, and I know you'll do so well. And so, yeah, for those of you who don't know, we communicate via Slack, and there was a discussion that came up within the kind of coach, like certification coaches group, and what happened there was we were talking about like how when you start working with somebody that has insomnia, it can almost come across for the person as if you're blaming them, but you're not. You're educating them. And then you said something which was like, it's not anybody's fault, but it is your responsibility. So I thought I really wanted to talk about that and expand on that. So tell us a little bit about where did that come from, and what are your thoughts around this topic?
Sure. Yeah. Just the concept of it, which was something that Anna brought up in our chat, just how difficult it is to talk with somebody about insomnia, because it's driven by this hyperarousal, which is driven by anxiety, which is often something that we are producing ourselves through our own thought patterns, through our own behaviors, through our daily habits, through lots of things that we're doing. So essentially our own thoughts and behaviors a lot of the time are really driving our own fear and anxiety, and therefore hyperarousal around sleep. So we're almost, we are the architects of our own suffering in when it comes to insomnia. And that's a difficult thing for somebody to wrap their heads around, especially if they've been struggling with insomnia for a really, really long time, so many years, because you could fall into a pattern of thinking, of blaming yourself and saying, well, I've created this, I've created all of my own suffering, and there can be just a lot of guilt and a lot of shame around those feelings. And so my thought on a lot of this was that, that there is this difference between fault and responsibility. And it's nobody, even though we are basically creating a lot of this problem, but we don't know that if we're in that situation. So anybody who's dealing with insomnia and has been for a while, even for a brief period of time, of course, your thoughts and behaviors and habits are contributing to your insomnia, but you don't know that that's the case. And even at the beginning, when you know that that's the case, it's very difficult to actually change a lot of these things because they're so deeply ingrained. Like, habits are so hard to change. And so I like to make that distinction between fault and responsibility. It's not somebody's fault, because you really cannot do it better when you don't know better. But when you start to become educated about not just insomnia, but any sort of health issue that, you play a role in it, it is your responsibility to then kind of step forward and take certain steps to help yourself heal from from insomnia, or whatever issue you may be dealing with. So I thought that was an important distinction, just because if you remove that element of fault, you take away a lot of that guilt and that shame. And it can be so easy to get trapped in the guilt and shame, and then therefore not take any responsibility, because all you feel is kind of guilt, and you feel poorly for contributing to basically your own suffering in this way. So really, it's almost like you want to be really clear that it's not about fault, but it is about taking responsibility for your health. And once you know better, you can essentially start doing better and working with yourself to change some of those thoughts and behaviors and those deeply ingrained patterns that, quite frankly, we all have and we all struggle with and we're all working on, and all of that's okay, and it takes time. But doing that work is really what it means to start taking responsibility for your health and for your insomnia.
Absolutely. And, when you said that when you remove the element of fault, then you can take responsibility, which is so true. And I was almost expecting you to say, but if you remove responsibility, then you won't get anywhere because you don't have any foundation, right?
Exactly. And I think that's the problem, is because it's so that the concept of thinking about, well, wow, like I've been contributing to this, I've been causing this, and the experience is so painful, it's so difficult. So to think that you're almost the creator of it is so painful that it can be really easy to get lost in that guilt. That then you cannot take responsibility for it because it's just too painful.
Absolutely.
That's the case. Yeah.
The pain, I heard expression of sometimes we need to look under the hood, kind of look inside ourselves, and that can be so painful that we just like close it and we don't even want to go there. That's a problem. And completely understandable, but it is a challenge. And another one is all the confusion out there. I think what often happens is that people are told that, you have insomnia because there's kind of an imbalance in your hormones or your brain system, or you have insomnia because of this kind of external factor. And then naturally, and then when you educate that person about like, no, that's not really the case, then it becomes like almost like a confrontational thing. That's like, so you're saying this is my fault?
Exactly.
And that confusion in the sleep world about what is causing it can lead someone to say, this is nonsense. And go down the looking for the outside thing that is causing it too, right?
Right. That's exactly it. Especially because our traditional model is really to look externally, or to take the pill for the symptom and to really kind of outsource whatever symptom we're having. Outsourcing it. And as opposed to looking internally, where most of the answers are likely going to be found, but it's much more difficult. It's more painful. And that responsibility piece, I think, can too often get tangled up with blaming and fault. And then that can prevent somebody from even wanting to take responsibility. Just like you said, they just want to turn away from that because of the pain. If that's true, then I've created this, and I've created some of my most difficult struggles. But I would say that's true for almost everyone. If you really look broadly with any issue, we are usually at the core of whatever it is we're struggling with, whether we like to think that or not. That tends to be the case. Right?
I absolutely agree with you. Absolutely agree with you. And I think that was a great little discussion. And let's jump into our questions. There are 3 questions from the community, so I'm going to share my screen here. And the first one is from Lara, who has sent questions before, I know. Let's read this. Lara says, hello, Daniel. I wrote you a few times already. I watched videos that you recommended me. I felt better, but I'm still struggling with sleep. I usually go to bed around 11, so 23, and then I'm waking up every 2 hours, not knowing did I sleep or not. Sometimes I remember extremely vivid dreams, or sometimes I don't remember anything. Waking up every 2 hours looks like I just opened my eyes, not even being aware if I slept or not. Based on the fact I sleep and DPDR, I don't know what that was exactly, but I don't have any neurological problem right now, so my parents are not worried a lot. But do you think, based on that, what is happening, I can still have some degenerative neurological disease? Thank you. So I want to start off by saying that we cannot, nothing here is medical advice. This is just me and Michelle sharing some general thoughts and generally applicable things. But I just want to say, first of all, that when somebody says on the channel that I'm afraid of a neurological disease, most people are afraid of fatal insomnia, sporadic fatal insomnia. And I just want to say again that many people have heard me say many times is that this is really not an insomnia. Insomnia is driven by fear and anxiety and like searching for the answer and looking for the clues and things like that. When people have these neurological disorders, they are obviously ill to people around them, but they don't suffer from insomnia. They sleep less, but it's not a mystery or anxiety. So I just want to share that with you, Lara, and everyone else that is tuning in. And then going back to like what Lara describes here more, Michelle, what are your thoughts on what she describes with her sleep?
Yeah, I can completely understand where she's coming from with the fear of having a deeper physical issue. Daniels, I kind of fell down that rabbit hole as well with myself for years, thinking with me, it was specifically the twitching I was experiencing so much that I thought, this really isn't normal. This must be a severe neurological issue. And of course, I had no idea what hyperarousal was. And so when we were reading what she wrote, I see hyperarousal everywhere. I think in her words, waking up frequently, the vivid dreams. To me, this is kind of a very hallmark sign of having a lot of hyperarousal, and it's incredibly normal. And I would say the vast majority of people who are dealing with insomnia are struggling with an element of this and are confused by it. And for me, knowing all the different symptoms of hyperarousal helped so immensely. It helped put my mind at ease, knowing, okay, this isn't a neurological disease of some kind. My brain is really it's hyper-aroused right now. And so that's what I see in her words as well. And it's very normal what she's experiencing. I feel like this is very classic hyperarousal symptoms where the fear around sleep, the anxiety around being awake at night is going to result in frequent wake-ups because your brain isn't going to feel safe sleeping or safe, at night or being awake at night. And really vivid dreams is another sign of hyperarousal as well. And it's not dangerous. And what I like to say to people is that, usually if you wake up and you are not sure if you were sleeping, you were sleeping. Like that loss of concept of time of I'm not sure, typically that means you were sleeping. So that's good. And vivid dreams, it's easier to wake up when we're in a dream state. It's a lighter form of sleep than as opposed to deeper sleep. So we can often wake up from dreams. And if you woke up from a dream, even if it's vivid, again, it's a sign you were sleeping. So that's working on reframing a little bit to say, these are actually signs that you are sleeping. I know that you're not sleeping in a way that is ideal for you. But maybe just knowing that what you're experiencing is a result of hyperarousal. So it's completely normal. It's completely safe. And just to give it a little bit more time, because even if you're becoming more educated about what insomnia is and what drives it, like she mentions at the beginning, she's been listening to your content, and that's great. Keep doing that. It still is going to take some time for hyperarousal levels to go down. It really does take time, and there's lots of ups and downs that you will probably experience along the way, and that's completely normal too. So the more patient you can be, and I know that I hate patient people. It's like, what? How can I be patient with this? I'll quote.
Claire Weeks.
Claire Weeks. Thank you. With just let some more time pass. Keep doing what you're doing and let time pass. Yes, thank you, Claire Weeks. Those are my thoughts.
Absolutely. And we should, when we talk more about Laura's question here, we should go back on that to Claire Weeks for a second there, talking about that. But yeah, I totally agree with everything you said, Michelle. And I just want to add maybe a little practical pointer here, which is Laura says, I know it's 2 hours. I wake up every 2 hours, which to me tells me that either Lara is kind of checking the time and knowing that it's 2 hours, or just making a mental kind of calculation. It was probably 2 hours, which is very natural to do when you want to have control of something. But I think something real practical for you, Lara, could be to just like sort of abandon that and make the night as timeless as possible. Don't check the time. Don't know what time it is, and good things will come for you too, for sure.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Right. So yeah, when I read the Claire Weeks, the book she's most known for, I think, Healing for Your Nerves. And I picked up on that too, that patience, basically, to me, what I really took from that was that when you say be patient, it's kind of asking somebody to wait for something that is about to happen. You kind of like, be patient. And then you're like, I'm patient. And it's almost like you're waiting for something. And the more you wait for something, the more the more stressed out you become because you're waiting for something. When you say let time pass, you remove that element. So that's what I thought. Yeah, that's a good. So I also stopped saying patience. But was that kind of similar to what you thought?
That
when you
was
read that?
exactly what I was thinking. Well, because I was reading that in her book as well, and how she was talking about how she never tells people to be patient when they're dealing with any sort of anxiety, nervous illness, insomnia, because it's too frustrating for people, right? Because then they're even more fixated on time.
Yeah,
so it just goes the other way. So I liked her. She said, that's why I always said, just let more time pass. Do these things and let more time pass. And to me, that's more like live your life. And as you're doing that, time will pass.
Exactly.
As opposed to being fixated on when am I going to get there? When am I going to get there?
100%.
Yeah.
We will let time pass. All right. Now, the next question was actually a very brief. It was a brief message from Sunil here, which is not really a question, but I want to bring it up anyway, because maybe it'll be helpful to Sunil or anyone else. Sunil just says, I've been struggling with sleep and it has gotten better, but not perfect. I would like to take your advice. And so I just want to say to Sunil and anyone else that, of course, I'm here to share advice. So it's on this channel, there's plenty of advice. And if you want to work more with me, then head over to the sleepcoachschool.com, and we have our self-coaching master program, my app, etc. So just a little bit there for Sunil. And here's Jake. Jake says, this is live. Hi, I just watched the latest Talk Insomnia episode. Some really good insights, and I imagine it will be extremely helpful to many people. Great work. Absolutely. Thank you, Jake. And I think this was Ali, who was there yesterday, and she shared some really, really good pointers. Okay. Now, this is actually, I was really excited about this one, Michelle, because like you're the perfect person to answer this question from Chen. So let's read this. I maybe want to ask Neil or anyone who has been through a lot and overcame it in the end. I hope my question can also help others. I have insomnia for 5 years, and I can go days without any sleep, only to sleep for a day, maybe 2 or some hours, then feel like I was hit by a train. Mm-hmm. Every day I try my best to function, but I'm fatigued, so tired. The ground is moving like I'm on a boat. Sometimes I have panic, but lately it's only tremors daily. Did you experience all this? I've tried to accept all of this, just move on and live on. But sometimes this tiredness, it is unending and make me feel sad deeply. Been to the doctor. I have no illness, only allergy, but I don't think allergy causes this much fatigue. I've tried medication, but only made me get panic attack. Today, I seldom have panic attack, only small tremor and shakiness and intense neck tension. Maybe I'm not scared of not sleeping, but the fatigue, weakness, strong dizziness, headache after years of not sleeping actually causes me to not be able to function during the day or enjoy it. What is your point of view and experience on this? So yeah, when I read this, I was like, I'm so glad Michelle is with me, because I think you can relate to a lot of this. But there's a lot to talk about here, but just like overall big picture, when you hear this, what are your thoughts, Michelle? Mm-hmm.
And that was from Chen?
Chen, yeah.
Yeah, Chen, I feel your pain. I feel like I have a very similar story. I had severe insomnia for 5 years. As well, I had lots of physical symptoms. Basically, everything that you wrote down as I was listening to that, I could see myself in that exactly. It's very difficult. And I also had the experience of not sleeping for several days at a time at all. And so literally, because I wasn't even in bed, I couldn't sleep so much that I would be awake, reading, doing things. So I knew I wasn't getting any sleep for, sometimes 3 or 4 nights in a row, only to have the same experience he describes, crashing for a night, and then feeling horrible, like you've been hit by, a truck the next day. And I kind of understand that now, as the less you sleep, the more your body is producing adrenaline, essentially, to get you through the day, and other types of stress hormones like cortisol. And the moment you sleep, that's going to go down all of a sudden. So you're suddenly going to go from here to here really, really quickly, and just feel pretty awful. So that I think that's really, really normal when you are coming from a period of not sleeping for an extended period of time, and then you do get some sleep, to feel kind of worse in a weird way. That was always my experience. The longer I would go without sleep before I would sleep, after that sleep, I would feel the absolute worst. Just the pure exhaustion. And I think that's also just a natural part of our body wanting to make us feel that tired so that we rest. So I actually think it's part of like our body's natural systems kicking in to try to help and protect us, right? Oh, this person needs rest. I'm going to actually physically make them feel tired so that they are forced to rest more. So I wouldn't be scared of that particular feeling, like know that that's just really very common, very normal for the body to be doing. Of course, all the other symptoms you mentioned, fatigue, shaking, like I think you mentioned having kind of tremors. For me, it was a lot of twitching. So maybe that's really similar. A lot of that is hyperarousal issues, right? And your body's in this state of fight or flight, and you're feeling really on edge. You're likely very anxious and worried about the next night, how you're going to cope through the day. So part of this is just the physical difficulty of going without sleep and how that's going to make you feel tired. But also a huge part of this is the struggle of all of the worry, all of the anxiety, the fear essentially of, when will sleep come? Will I ever sleep again? What is tonight going to look like? Am I going to be able to function? Am I going to have tremors or twitches tomorrow? And what does that mean? And all of it. And the struggle of all of it can produce more and more hyperarousal, more anxiety, and then ironically, more and more of those tremors that you're dealing with. So it's almost, you get stuck in this cycle, essentially, where the less you sleep, the more symptoms you feel like you have, the less you sleep, the more anxious you become, the more worried, the more scared, and then the more symptoms. And then it just keeps going around in a circle that you feel quite trapped in. So I definitely was there for years. So I understand how difficult that is. For me, it was so helpful to learn about hyperarousal and all of the symptoms. So a lot of what you're describing, Chen, especially the tremors, the nervousness, the fatigue, like so much of that is coming from your struggle with the insomnia itself, the fear that you have, the anxiety, and all of that is understandable and common. Everybody has that. It's just, if you can step back and look at that piece of it, it can be very helpful to understand that the actual struggle is producing such a large portion of that, even the fatigue itself, because it's so emotionally draining to constantly be in battle with anything, but especially your sleep, because we all feel very attached to our sleep. It's a normal biological process. So if it's disrupted, we get very scared. So that ongoing struggle and that ongoing fear is really, really at the root of so much of this, and is at the root of the hyperarousal that you're experiencing. And then that hyperarousal, again, is going to produce a lot of different physical symptoms, some of which you're describing, like tremors and things like that. So I hope that helps a little bit, just to know, like, you found Daniel's channel, you're in the right place. Keep educating yourself about what insomnia really is, and about how to essentially start to step away from that struggle so that you can start to reduce hyperarousal. And the more you do that, the more you'll be able to release a bit of the feelings of fatigue and anxiety and exhaustion. And the more that happens, the more you'll be able to sleep a little bit more. And then you'll be getting into more of a positive reinforced cycle that you actually want to be in. And it takes time. And Daniel has a lot of really great videos that talk about, again, letting time pass, as we just said, right? But also knowing there's a lot of ups and downs along the way as well, especially with hyperarousal issues, because it just is going to take time for your body to calm down a little bit around this issue, and calm itself around being tired in the day or being awake at night. And it's a process. It's a retraining of the mind and body, for sure.
Absolutely. And I know Chen quite well, actually. And just to give some more context here, Chen was actually my client in BedTyme for a while, and you can tell. You of course you don't know this, Michelle, because you haven't seen this, but the initial comments from you, Chen, were those of somebody who's in what I call kind of Oz, like complete bewilderment, complete puzzlement, and like real struggle. And so now I can tell that what Chen is describing here is much more insight, and Chen is in a much better place. But I think something of what Oh, here's a nice comment from Neil to you, Michelle. Michelle describes Insomnia amazingly, has great devices. That's
Thanks,
true.
Neil.
Absolutely. And so where I was going to say was to say that I think there's a component in Chen's message here that the struggle with insomnia is not as intense as it was before, but now there's kind of these new things, and you talked a lot about the tremors and the it twitches, etc., and how they are just part of it, and we talked about that. But I want to spend maybe a little bit more time on the fatigue here, and the way I think of it is that the brain is, particularly when you have this struggle with insomnia, it's in this state of like hyperarousal, which we talked about, and like looking out for fears and problems and wanting to keep you safe, and it identifies all kinds of things like, oh, this could be a problem, no, this could be a problem, and one of them can be fatigue, and one can be like, I'm too fatigued, this is not normal fatigue, I'm extremely fatigued, and now this becomes another focus. And I think the key is basically the same as always, that seeing that it is nothing wrong with the fatigue, and when you stop with that battle, the battle to end the fatigue and stop the fatigue, then that gets better too. But what are your thoughts on this?
I completely agree. That's a big part of it, because none of us like to feel fatigued. It's just not pleasant. And especially if you've been battling insomnia for years at a time, your fatigue is probably, pretty bad. It can be a lot of fatigue for sure. Again, you've been battling for quite a long time. You're emotionally exhausted from all of it. You're physically drained. And it was actually something that Hugo, which is another one of the students, brought up as well, is just the idea of the fear of the fatigue itself. And when he was writing about that, I realized, oh, I've definitely had that. And one of the ways that he talked about coping with the fear of fatigue was almost becoming more hyperactive in the day, almost on purpose. And I realize I have done that, and still sometimes will catch myself doing that. I was in this cycle just the other day where I was feeling really tired, and my automatic response was to almost do something to make get my adrenaline going a little bit. And I caught myself becoming a bit hyperactive, and as a way to get rid of feeling the fatigue. And okay, I can see what's happening, and intentionally kind of stepped away. I could feel my body go back down to the fatigue. And I thought, oh, well, this is not as pleasant. But let me see if I can just be with this fatigue and go about my day kind of feeling quite tired. And that's completely fine. So yeah, it makes sense that the fatigue itself, because it's difficult to cope with, becomes its own fear. It's your daytime fear. It's like sleep is the nighttime fear, and then your daytime fear becomes fatigue and exhaustion. And then you will end up doing certain things in the day to cope with that. And for some people, it is that, let me become almost hyperactive. Let me push myself, whether it's at work, whether it's physically, whether it's even socially, to get into that overdrive state in the body, so that the adrenaline, cortisol, and all your other hormones kind of kick in a little bit more, and you don't feel it anymore. And then the problem with that is, if you're always doing that, then you're trapping yourself in that fight or flight, that hyperarousal. You're hyperarousing yourself on purpose, in a weird way, subconsciously, to reduce your own exhaustion levels, so that you can cope with your day and not go through as much unpleasantness, or to feel like you're being more productive. I think that's another reason too, because people with insomnia, one of the fears is like, I won't be productive enough the next day. So if you can get yourself a bit hyper aroused, so to speak, you can be more productive. You'll feel like, okay, at least I was able to accomplish these things today, but at what cost? And could you have still accomplished those things feeling more tired? Probably.
Yeah.
So I think it's like we're just running away from these unpleasant feelings, which makes sense. And then we go into the nighttime, and we're battling not sleeping, we're battling wakefulness and the fear around that. And we have other coping mechanisms for that. And then we switch into the day, and how can we cope with the fear of fatigue? And so the battle is just never ending, right? And then the solution to all of it is just to kind of surrender and go, okay, I'm exhausted. I'm just going to be exhausted today. What can I do? What can I get done? And can I just accept how I feel right now? And when the night comes, can I accept being awake right now if I'm not sleeping? And just kind of give into the whole process. That's very hard, but that is where a lot of freedom.
Absolutely.
That's the freedom.
That is it. And
Yeah.
you know, now I want to just add, it's kind of rephrase what we talked about a little bit, but maybe add another little angle, which is the physical fatigue versus the emotional fatigue, which I think is always so important to talk about, because it's so easy to get confused there too. You know, we have fatigue sometimes is what I like to call a cue. It's like I'm hungry, I'm supposed to eat. I'm cold, I'm supposed to put something on. And sometimes fatigue is nothing but a simple cue from your body that you were out, you know, you walked a lot today, so you feel tired in your legs, you're supposed to sit down. It's like, and that fatigue, that physical fatigue, is very straightforward. It's like you feel tired in kind of a good way. You sit down and you're like, oh, now I feel better. Nice. But then you have the emotional fatigue.
Oh, yeah.
The deep-rooted inside,
it's heavy,
right? Heavy, unpleasant fatigue. And the tricky thing with that is that it behaves just like an emotion. It is an emotion in a way. Like, so when you have that, like that emotional fatigue, and you're like, oh, I'm going to rest so it goes away. I'm going to rest so it goes away. Oh no, it's still there. What can I do? And it behaves just like an emotion, meaning like the more you try to escape it, the more sticky it becomes, right?
Absolutely. And I think too, part of it is, if you have a lot of fatigue, you can start to feel a little bit depressed, like it's a down type of emotion, right? And so I think that's the other thing we're all trying to escape, is we don't want to feel depressive feelings. We don't want that mood shift. So anything we can do, if we are intentionally but hyperactive, we can also escape those feelings, the depressive mood for a little bit. It's all temporary, of course, right? And then at what expense, right? And then your body is vibrating up here for the day, and then you wonder why you can't get it down, because every day you're drilling it up. And
Good one. We have a live comment here from Steven. Hi, both. I'm on the road to much better sleep, but still experiencing paradoxical insomnia, particularly in the very early morning. Any advice on this matter? We talked about this actually early in the broadcast, but what are your thoughts on that, Michelle?
And does he mean by this that early in the morning, like he's finally falling asleep early in the morning? Is that what that reference is?
I think, and Steven, if you're live with us, you can comment again. But the way I interpret this is that in the early morning, probably like towards like whatever 4, 5, 6 a.m. or something like that. That's when he doesn't know if he's asleep or not. He has that time traveling or whatnot. Right. That's how I interpret it.
Okay, yeah, I think part of it is, if you're used to really struggling a lot at night and being up a lot at night, there's this experience around 4 or 5. It could be different for everybody, but typically it's like right when the sun starts to come up, where you're almost just so defeated and you give up completely. And sometimes you end up falling into a bit of a sleep at that point, just because you've completely given up on getting any sleep. You almost don't care anymore. You're in this full stage of such complete and utter defeat that you actually, okay, perfect, that you end up paradoxically sleeping at that point. And I've had that experience so many times, and I can't even tell you how angry that used to make me. Just like, oh, I've been trying all night, and here I am falling asleep from 6 to 8 or something like that. And for me, it was often deep sleep. Like my deepest sleep was after 6 o'clock in the morning, which is just very frustrating. But now I understand it, because of this channel and working with you, Daniel. It's really, that's the moment when you start to give up, your hyperarousal is going to go right down. You're no longer in the battle. You've given up. You're waving the white flag. Also, you've been up all night, so your sleep drive is actually higher than it would have been earlier in the night. So you have both. You still have your sleep drive because you haven't slept, and in addition to that, you've given up. So your anxiety levels and that hyperarousal is going to start to go down, and then the two together are just going to let you fall asleep. But if it feels really shallow, it's normal too, because you've probably been up battling your insomnia all night and really hyperaroused and stressed. And so even if you fall asleep, let's say from 5 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock in the morning, you may not even almost realize you were sleeping, because you were so hyperaroused that it's like, maybe you were having vivid dreams. I'm not really sure, but it may not feel like the deepest sleep always.
Yeah, I think actually this what you said in the end. I think that's what you described in the first part. That's what I call like the surrender sleep. When people are like, why do I sleep the best just when the sun comes up? But I think what Steven said here is that usually around 3 to 4 a.m., which Stephen is probably just guessing because I'm sure he doesn't check the time.
But he never checks the clock anymore. He knows better. He knows better than that. Yep.
But I think this is also very common, which is that when you insomnia can be experienced in so many different ways. And for Stephen, I think it's like Stephen has been learning more and is less hyperarousal overall, and then sleeps well for the first stretch of the night, but then wakes up and has a little bit of hyperarousal left. And then you can have this like paradoxical insomnia in the early part of the morning where you're like vivid dreams, shallow sleep, superficial sleep. You don't really know, did I sleep or did I not sleep? I just want to say nothing strange or unusual about it. And it's basically like whenever somebody is overall doing better, but says like, oh, I'm doing better overall, but I have this thing going on, then the answer is always kind of like just more of the same, more of like, more of letting go, more of not researching, whatever led you to do better, just more of that.
More, keep doing what you're doing. And the only other thing I thought of was how normal that is as well, because that really deep part of sleep, if you're going to get it, will be at the beginning of the night. And then as the night progresses, the sleep is going to be a little bit more light. You're going to have a little bit more REM or like dream sleep, but it's more light. So it's easier than as the night progresses. It's much more common to be waking up or having that paradoxical, like, did I sleep? Did I not sleep? As opposed to maybe the first hour that you're asleep, because you're more likely to get some deep sleep at that point, but not know it. We never know it.
Yeah.
We think we assume we're not getting any of that, but we probably are, right?
Absolutely. And so, Stephen, I want to say thanks for commenting. And I always like to point out when people are doing better, like you wouldn't have done better unless you'd be learning and being courageous. So well done there. Oh, and by the way, Michelle, what are your, I know you're pretty early in the program, but in terms of like becoming a sleep coach, what are your thoughts on, have you thought about like are you going to create like a video-based course, or what are you going to do?
Good question. I don't have solid answers quite yet. I know video will be part of it. I'm not sure exactly in what context. I can see doing video-based courses at some point. I don't suspect I will start there, but I definitely think that potentially a YouTube channel in video-based communication in some sense, and then working one-on-one with clients, and then maybe eventually doing video-based courses down the line. But I don't have it all planned out yet, so I won't pretend I do.
Sounds good. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on. Thank you everyone for your comments, and have a nice weekend, everyone.
Yeah, thanks everyone.